Hello, bonsoir, and bienvenue to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this week, as always, are Eric Devine and Philippe Barjou. With the transfer deadline looming and European nights on the horizon, the football season is really starting to get into gear. And we have another fun-filled show for you this week, but before we head into that territory, here's Eric with the news.
Thank you, Nathan. PSG opened Ligue 1's third match day with yet another narrow victory, Blaise Matuidi's second goal in as many games the difference, as the champions held off the determined Montpellier side 1-0. Lyon, meanwhile, looked at sea against Rennes, as opportunistic goals from Pedro Henrique and Mehdi Zefan on his return to the Stade Gerland gave the visitors the points, a fine goal from Nabil Fekir not being enough. In the multiplex, Andy Delors' second goal for Caen was also not enough as host Nice won 2-1, all three goals coming in the span of 10 second-half minutes. At the Beaujoire, Nantes continued their unbeaten start thanks to a 1-0 victory over Reims, who saw their own perfect record receive its first blemish. Bastia, meanwhile, continued their own fine beginning to the season with a 3-0 win over hapless Guingamp, who replaced Montpellier at the bottom of the table with the result. In Toulouse, the hosts took advantage of an understrength Monaco side with an early goal from Tango Hamed Doumbia, for substitute Thomas Lemar struck an equalizer shortly after his introduction midway through the second half. Angers, meanwhile, were perhaps the real story of the day, knocking back host Gazélec 2-0 thanks to a brace from Cheikh Ndoye, leaving them on 7 points after 3 matches. On Sunday, the two weary Europa League participants were each in action, Bordeaux earning a point in a scoreless if spirited draw in Lille, while Saint-Etienne, playing against 10 men for virtually the entire match, thanks to Benjamin Lecomte's early dismissal, still needed a late winner from Romain Amouma away to Lorient, but managed to take all 3 points 1-0. The real fireworks, however, of the weekend were saved for last as Marseille romped to a 6-0 victory over hapless Troyes and manager Michel Gonzalez's debut, Michy Batshuayi notching a brace, and Romain Alessandrini adding a goal and a pair of assists. In European action, results were somewhat of a mixed bag for French sides. Monaco performed admirably, but failed to get a result, and losing 3-1 at the Mestalla to Valencia, with the return leg to be played tomorrow. Bordeaux, meanwhile, put out a strong side at home in the Europa League, and were rewarded with a 1-0 win thanks to Wabi Kazri providing the match's solitary goal. Saint-Etienne, meanwhile, scraped a 1-1 draw at Moldovan side Milsami, the result coming despite a missed penalty from Lever. In Ligue 2, the chase for promotion continues apace, as 5 teams remain unbeaten after 4 matches. Metz is the leader on 10 points, while Clermont and Nancy are level on 8 points and second and third, respectively. That's all the news for now. Back to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Eric. And remember, for all your latest French football news, head on over to our websites and Twitter. The links are in the description of this video. And please, during the show, feel free to tweet us at the GFFN show. Marseille appointed a new manager this week in former Sevilla and Olympiacos coach Michel Gonzalez. It's not one of the big names that were linked with the job early on, Philip, but how do you rate this appointment?
It's received with a lot of enthusiasm all around, as Lebrun, the Marseille chairman, was trying to get someone in, and I actually saw that he wouldn't be able to get someone in, as the place was a bit of a mess. But it has been actually quite welcome, because Michel, first press conference, very smiling, very communicative, very Latin in a way, which was the complete opposite of Bielsa. I mean, there has been some criticism already of Michel, saying there was Sambouya Tabare, who plays for Guingamp, who played for Michel at Olympiacos, saying he made him hate football, which was a very hard thing to do. But all in all, everybody was quite happy to have a rather enthusiastic guy who's really wants to build from scratch, because Marseille sold all their best players, and they're now playing with all the few summer signings that they made. I think that can work out fine. But I'm pretty much expecting the same as last season, where Marseille will play with their kids and have a real go at it, and we'll see how this goes. But if last night is any indication, it's they're probably going to have a good time, because that's what they did. They scored wonderful goals. They played some quite good football. Yes, Troyes were having a terrible second half. But they really looked like they had a great time last night. They really enjoyed it. Batshuayi, Diawara, Lemina, they all enjoyed themselves, which is great to see. So if Michel can keep that going for a few months, that would be the perfect appointment from La Brune.
Eric, how do you take this appointment? It wasn't something that was mentioned beforehand, really, but is Michel a good coach to take Marseille forward?
I think for the time being, his enthusiasm, as Philip rightly said, I think will be very important in getting these young players together and putting a positive spin on things. I mean, there is certainly the danger in this Marseille situation whereby the players could end up, having this sort of siege mentality. Well, player X, player Y, player Z left, and you didn't. So this is what we've got to do. And whereas I think that could have a necessarily negative spin to it, I think that the way Michel appears to be approaching things, both on a personal level and on the pitch, appears to be a very positive one. There's still a lot of potential with this squad, and I think that they have a really intriguing mix of youngsters, and provided nobody else goes, really solid veterans. You look at the likes of Nkulu, Mandanda, Alessandrini, Diarra, Diaby if he does get fit. Balanced out with a lot of really intriguing younger players. I think this club has a lot of potential, and if the general mood around the club can be one of positivity, which it appears to be definitely the mandate of Michel at this point, then I think there's a lot of potential here. So for me, yes, I think that attitude and playing attractive, attacking football are really what's needed to get this club pointed in the right direction, to harness this young talent, to play it in a way that's aesthetically pleasing, and also gets results on the pitch. That being said, let's see how it goes against a tougher opponent. The Velodrome's a tough place to play. Troyes have a very poor defensive record. In addition to being promoted side, we look at the 3 goals they conceded against Nice last weekend. So take this particular result with a grain of salt, but I think that as far as first impressions go, Michel is certainly approaching things in the correct way. I would also say that the clear out of the likes of Romao and Thauvin this week were probably a positive thing. I think that the performances those two had put in the first few matches were particularly harmful to the attitude around the club. Neither one of them played anywhere near close to their best, and being players that had been at the club for a while and were sort of more experienced and not necessarily being looked to as leaders, but were sort of had been favorites of Bielsa's. Both of them were pretty much undroppable when healthy last year. I think that that's also going to be a positive as well as the appointment of Michel. There's a lot of new faces, and in terms of the club's attitude, there's also an opportunity to start from scratch here. So, yeah, I think good on Le Brun for making a somewhat bold choice. I mean, Michel's career had somewhat mixed results. His time in Spain was a little bit uneven. I kind of feel like Sevilla underachieved during his tenure there, but he did exceptionally well in Greece at Olympiacos. Was also dismissed there with the team in first place. Kind of got a raw deal there. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to be happy about, but let's give it another 4 or 5 games. Let's see how Marseille handle fixture congestion when Europa League starts, and let's see how they fare against more difficult opponents.
The game on Friday night is going to be very interesting at Guingamp, which will be probably a bit tougher because they're not promoted, and it's not going to be at the Velodrome. It's going to be in Brittany. One thing that really needs to be said is that last night was really about also the positive effect of not having Bielsa anymore. When I say that, I'm thinking about a player like Alessandrini, who really did not have any favours with Bielsa, and also with Doria, who never played under Bielsa, and he didn't really know why. He was nobody really knows. Maybe it was low. Maybe it was. I mean, it was really unclear. And Bielsa never came up straight with that. And Michel did say about this Doria situation that he'll get his chance. Everybody will get his chance. Well, he didn't play last night. He stayed on the bench, but it's it's a positive, very positive message. But the game against Guingamp is going to be really interesting to test Marseille. They actually have Bastia in 3 weeks' time before hosting Lyon, which is the next big game. So. Yeah, it's. I think it's also a very good period because after Guingamp they've got this international break where they can regroup and you never know, maybe they'll make a couple of astute signings and the squad will look quite okay. I can't really tell where they're going to finish though. No idea.
As always, I think Eric made a good point that we have to treat this with a grain of salt because it's Marseille as always, isn't it? Mm. But it is strange to think back that a couple of weeks ago with our talk with Mo, that it was such doom and gloom around the place that we were so unsure, and all of a sudden it sounds quite positive. And Eric, my worry originally with Marseille this season was the amount of goals that left the club. That seemed to evaporate quite quickly on Sunday, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Philip rightly mentioned Alessandrini was a tremendous player during his time at Rennes. I think he had 11 goals and 5 assists his last season there. There are players who can score on this team. It's just a matter of them being used properly. The team does still need another number 9. I do worry with the Europa League about Batshuayi playing every game. They have a couple of youngsters there that could play there, and potentially you could look at the likes of an Nkudu there playing as a striker too. But the difference between the physical presence of a Batshuayi and the likes of an Nkudu, who's a more wiry, stringy player, is a big difference, and it's going to necessitate a tactical shift there. So getting a new striker in is important, but I think that as far as a starting 11 goes, there's plenty of goals there, and I wouldn't necessarily worry about that too much. I don't expect them to be scoring 3, 4, 5, 6 goals every week, but neither is there going to be this sort of nerve jangling, are we going to score, aren't we? But a lot of teams in Liga seem to be suffering from. I mean, you mentioned Guingamp. I mean, they're one of those teams. Montpellier, Lille. There's several teams that are yet to score after 3 matches in this league. So, if you can only get 1 or 2 goals a game, that might be enough to return Marseille to contending for European positions.
What worries me is that Marseille are actually playing in Europe this season. I mean, if it were only as the league and the domestic cups, it would be fine. But they're going to have to play 6 group stage games of the Europa League. And I don't know if someone like Batshuayi gets injured. I really don't know how they're gonna play. So I do think it needs strengthening if they're going to take the Europa League seriously, because they did work quite hard last season to get into Europe. So would be quite a shame.
Well, I mean, this is the other thing too, is that you have all these young players who don't appear to be able to be given the opportunity to start. I'm thinking particularly of Sarr and Nkudu, talents who were really electrifying at certain moments last year for Metz and Nantes, respectively. Perhaps they could be part of to take an approach something along the lines of Tottenham Hotspur and have what's a quote-unquote Europa League 11 and a quote-unquote League 11, where the league is the competition to prioritize, but you give a chance to youngsters to develop their confidence and to sort of burnish their abilities. I mean, look at how that's worked for the likes of Harry Kane. I'm not going to say that an Nkudu or a Sarr, or these types of players are going to, or a Javier Manquillo, are going to blossom in the same sort of way that Kane did, but that opportunity to gain confidence, I think, could be tremendously important. I mean, Nkudu, for as talented as he was at Nantes, wasn't a week in, week out starter. He was certainly, more used as an impact substitute more often than not by De Zakarian there. Sarr started more often, but again, Mets were a team that never had much hope of anything other than just avoiding relegation throughout the season. So again, these types of young players are given confidence to get a decent run on the side in this competition. It's a good thing. I think that the club and the manager would it would behoove them to take a big picture approach to this. Give these youngsters this game time, allow them to develop, and also to play against a variety of styles. We don't like to admit it, but the stereotype of Ligue 1 of being an overly defensive league is physical, pacey, is an apt one oftentimes. Whereas in European competition we might be playing against a Portuguese side, a Serbian side, a Russian side, where they could interact with a variety of different players, which I think that variety of experience could really be a boon for the likes of those young players going further down the line. And also, even further back, the likes of a Baptiste Alloué or Doria or Stefan Sparagna. These types of players need to get more match experience, and the Europa League I think could be a really wonderful opportunity for them to do that.
That's an interesting point. I think going back to Michel and his appointment, I have an interesting question on that. With you were mentioning the more experienced players there, Eric, beforehand, with Steve Mandanda and Nicolas Nkulu. Do you think the move for a more positive coach might be to appease those more experienced players in possibly staying with the club?
I think at this point in their careers, players like that have experienced success with Marseille, those Nkulu and Ndanda in particular, and Diarra to a lesser extent as well, players that have experienced a high level of success, that's going to be their continued mandate, I would think, whether they can succeed in competing at the highest level. So positivity is only going to get you so far. If at the end of the window, Nkulu, Mandanda, those two in particular are staying at the club, it's because they believe in not this guy's smile and attitude and handshakes. They believe in the direction the club is going and the potential for growth there. Again, they're veteran players. But they're not, they're also both. I think Nkulu's 25 and Mandanda's 30. At their respective positions, they've still got a good 6 or 7 years at the top of their game. So, bearing that in mind, I think that they as players are going to want to see the club moving in a direction that allows them to remain competitive at the highest level. So I think that their attitude is certainly going to be helpful for them, but I don't think it's a make or break in terms of their staying at the club. They want to see a generally positive outlook both on and off the pitch to extend their tenures there at Marseille.
Well, I think at least that 6-0 battering of Troyes might have helped them decide for at least to stay for another week. We will move on now to comments made by Loic Ferry, the FC Lorient president, this weekend. Philip, can you fill us in on exactly what was said?
Yeah, of course. So basically, all the action happened yesterday, where Lorient lost their home game against Saint-Etienne 1-0. There's a French football magazine, I say magazine, I mean on television, that is basically between the English Premiership late kickoff and the Ligue 1 evening kickoff, which happened to be Marseille-Troyes. And what they do at the beginning is that they show the games of the afternoon, and Lorient playing Saint-Etienne and Lille playing Bordeaux. And basically, there's this very media-savvy French journalist called Pierre Ménez saying that basically Loic Ferry, who is Lorient chairman, did not invest enough money, or had more interest in investing in his real estate business, which is probably fair enough. It was when you know that guy, when you know Ménez, it's just a sly and snide comment that he makes basically every weekend. And Loic Ferry basically responded by texting him that he did invest 13 million on players, that he has been at Lorient for 7 years, it has been working very, very well. He mentioned that one of Ménez's friends has left Lorient, I'm 100% sure that that friend was Christian Gourcuff, who left to manage Algeria, and he's doing a fine job of it, really. But he really is a great manager. And yeah, basically he takes that to Pierre Menez, and then he put it on Twitter. And afterwards, basically, Menez is a journalist. You basically either you agree with him, or either you like him or you hate him. And the I hate Menez brigade basically said, "I support you, Loic Ferry. You were completely right to respond to his to Menez's critics. He's putting everyone against him. Blah blah blah." So it really started a real Twitter war against Menez's comments, who were just, being Menez as he usually is. He's just likes to say things as they are. They're a bit crude. I mean, he's not the softest journalist you'll ever meet. But he is a professional. And he knows he's been around for all his life, basically. He knows what he's talking about. And Ferry probably shouldn't have put his text messages on Twitter. So, I mean, if you're going to ask me my opinion on all this, is that Menez has a point. Ferry said that he invested 13 million on players, which, if you're looking at it from an English point of view, it really isn't a lot, because let's just say a good player costs 20 million pounds or euros or what have you. But in France, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a lot of money. It's 13 million. But basically, what Menez is saying is that not enough money was invested. And to be honest, I can see Lorient going on a downward spiral since Gourcuff left. I mean, Lorient were finishing top half every season under Gourcuff. He's left. Then another manager came in last season. They almost got relegated. They finished in front of in front of Reims, who almost went down. And they've started the season, not really well. I mean, they did draw at Lyon, but they're not doing too well at the moment. And he's basically saying what he wanted to say, I think, and not in a very polite manner, was if Lorient don't get their act together, they're going to go down. And I actually don't think he's far off the mark, as usual, because you've got the three promoted sides. You've got Troyes, who are not, but who just got a Morling. You've got Gazélec, who are a bit down there. Montpellier, who lost against PSG, really didn't actually. I don't really see it. I watched the game on Friday evening. I didn't see a whole deal that was wrong with Montpellier. So I do agree that Lorient, if they're not being careful, they're going to go down. That was basically what all this is about. So yeah, I think it's a huge misunderstanding that Menez just wanted to make his point across. He probably did it by pissing Ferry off, and it all started a Twitter war, basically.
Well, I will read Loic Ferry's comments in full for all the people who can't read the French. Thanks, Philip, for yourself for translating this for us. He said, "Good evening, Pierre. I have noticed your quotes in the CFC regarding my policy. I didn't know that your aim was to have awkward comments on people / things you know nothing about. I am surprised but also very disappointed because you seem to talk in good cause. Had you done your research correctly, you would know that FC Lorient have invested 13 million euros, much like Philippa said, in transfer fees in 2015 on Waris, Mukanjo, Philippatu, Ndong, Fofana, who has done as much in France. You may think that the team is less efficient, but you cannot say that we are not investing in the team. I would gladly welcome you to Lorient so you can notice what we do at FC Lorient, who, by the way, have won the under 17 league, and is the only side whose reserve side are CFA champions. I know that you have a friend who has left FC Lorient, and I would ask you to remain honest when mentioning what I've been doing at FC Lorient for the last 7 years. Good evening. Regards, Loic Ferry." Eric, what's your whole take on this outburst, really, on Twitter by Ferry against?
I mean, much like Jean-Michel Aulas, Ferry is someone who, is an astute businessman, but also cares about the competitive level of his club. I mean, yeah, he made quite a bit of money selling Ayew, but as he rightly mentions, he's making a huge effort to sign these players. I mean, Benjamin Mukanjo, Majid Waris, 2 seasons ago, he played the second half on loan in Ligue 1 and was a terror. I believe he scored 12 goals or something like that. These are really the types of signings that speak to a club who I think want to return to that period when they were a consistent, mid-table fixture rather than being a relegation scrape. They recognize Ayew as being a source of goals. They go out and they get Mukanjo and Waris. Again, these aren't top-level players. It's really hard to bring in the players at the very top level into France, into Ligue 1. But that being said, it's really difficult for a club of Lorient's level to do better. If you look at the struggles of a team like a Lille or a Saint-Etienne to have a prolific striker, they would probably be more than happy to have taken a flyer on the likes of a Waris or a Mukanjo. And also, not only the players they're bringing in, but the fact that Ferry has been so resolute in terms of holding on to Rafael Guerreiro in light of a host of interest in him as a player. His stock's very high right now. He's being linked with the likes of PSG and a host of other clubs. The success he's had both for Lorient and with a very bright European Under-21 championships this summer, his stock's incredibly high. And if he does stay through the end of the window, that's a real statement of intent from Ferry. And for me personally, I think Lorient have started the season pretty well. Yes, they did lose to Saint-Etienne, but to only concede 1 goal after playing virtually the entire match with 10 men is very impressive. And it was, a late opportunistic winner at that. They did get, quite a few, impressive saves from the backup keeper Chenot. But, this is a team that's got a lot. If things come together for Lorient correctly, I think this could be a really good season for them. They're much more defensively solid than they have been in past seasons. We saw that against Lorient. We saw that against Bastia. We saw that against Saint-Etienne. This is a team that's well organized. They've got one of the league's best young keepers in Lecomte. They've got a lot of exciting young players. Denis Bouanga is a player who's sort of come out of nowhere and has really impressed me in what I've seen of him. Valentin Levine. The striker Enzo Reale. I mean, there's really a lot of interesting young players here who can make a difference. Guerreiro being another one of those. And, like I said, if things fall together correctly for Lorient, I don't think relegation is going to be an issue at all. I think that they're going to be a team that, if they can continue to have this level of defensive solidity that they've displayed thus far, and, these new strikers can start scoring with regularity, it would be a surprise, I'll admit, but it wouldn't totally floor me were Lorient to make a push for Europe, particularly in the light of the issues that other quote unquote European contenders have been having. We look at the likes of Marseille, Saint-Etienne, Bordeaux, Lille, even Lyon. I mean, these are all teams that despite their high profiles in France, haven't had the smoothest starts to the season. And, should Lorient, get on a bit of a roll, when we look at this fixture list, the opportunity's certainly there. They're away to Reims and at home to Angers. There's no reason to think that couldn't be 6 points. And then in a league that's been struggling for goals so far, who knows how things could shake out for them. Especially with a lot of teams that look at the likes of Lyon, who didn't have European competition last year. They're trying to balance that. There's a lot of opportunity for Lorient to really push those teams into that 6th and 5th spot.
Well,
I certainly wouldn't have put. Sorry, Nathan. I certainly wouldn't have put Lorient as dead certs to go down. It looks a bit more likely now, but I think it's 3 games in, so it was basically a wake-up call from Menez, and I'm pretty sure it's actually going to work. One thing I'll just come out and say, I usually agree with Menez, and one thing I really didn't like about Ferry this summer is that he actually encouraged Frédéric Thiriez, who is the French League chairman, who wants to reduce the amount of promotion and relegation spots from 3 to 2 between Ligue 2 and Ligue 1, which is a terrible idea. And there were only 2 chairmen who came out and publicly supported Thiriez. It was Labrune, who we've seen this summer that he when it's more safe to make a quick buck, well, he's happy, and Ferry does, and the second one is Ferry, and he does strike me as a type of guy who's going to be extremely happy if, for instance, Thiriez comes up with an idea saying no relegations anymore. So that way, Ferry will get his side. Lorient will stay in Ligue 1 forever, and he'll be completely happy. He's not a risk taker. That's the thing. He's just not a risk taker, and he's been a good chairman. He's been there 7 years, and Lorient have been doing great for 7 years. But aside from that, I mean, I don't know. I think Menez has a point in actually making this wake-up call. Whether it's going to work or not, I don't know. I don't really see them being too far from the drop. I mean, either they're going to go down, but I just can't see them finishing top half, for instance. Certainly not right now.
Well, we've talked about the scoring issues that a lot of these supposed top half teams have had. I mean, Montpellier and Lille, I think, are 2 great examples. Who's going to step into that void to replace them? I mean, we've seen great starts from the likes of Caen and Nantes and Angers, but I still think there's more space for teams to step up into that void, particularly as Saint-Etienne and Bordeaux both qualify for the group stages of the Europa League. These are teams that are going to be dealing with a lot of fixture congestion, and are still, even without considering that, are still strapped for goals. If the likes of Mukanjo, again, and Waris can come good, I don't see why they couldn't, push for European competition, be somewhere around where Lille and Montpellier were last year, that 7th, 8th place, pushing towards the end of the season for European spots. But you don't see that because their improved defense, for me, is what's really gonna make things better for them. I mean, a bit of bad luck, or maybe a bad decision by Lecomte yesterday, and things could have gone quite a bit differently with the struggle Saint-Etienne have had, and especially coming off of that trip in Europe that they'd had. That game could have easily gone differently. I know you can't base a season on hypotheticals, but I think that the initiative that Lorient have taken in this case gives them a lot of potential.
I can see Rennes and Nice actually finishing between 5th and 10th in that upper half. I can see them strengthening and having a quite a good season. There's the first few games of the season are there, so those are the sides I would say would be up there with the Europeans, the usual suspects, if you will.
Well, I think Eric made a very good point earlier about holding on to Rafael Guerreiro if they can during this summer, because the profit they'll be able to make from that will be on the levels of deals they've made in the past for players like Vincent Aboubakar and the like. That's really kept them afloat, and I think Ferry's done a really good job of keeping that club, and he has every right to have a bit of a lash back and a bit of a, as you would do nowadays, a social media outburst for it. We'll move on from that now and look at back, as we were touching on there, about European football. But the main culprits in the midweek were Monaco, who were really backs against the wall heading back to the Stade Louis II on Tuesday. A 3-1 loss at the Mestalla against Valencia. It was tough to take. Eric, what went wrong in the end?
I don't think that anything particularly went wrong. having watched the match, I thought they played fairly well. They weren't as clinical as they could have been. They had their chances. I think that those players for Valencia are just a bit more experienced with this type of match. They have some younger players, the likes of Paco Alcacer, but a lot of these players, you look at the likes of Sofiane Feghouli, for example, that scored that last goal to make the difference. These are the types of players who have a lot of experience in European competition, in that sort of cauldron. Whereas, Monaco are relying on a lot of players who are, relatively inexperienced. For a lot of their own younger players, last season was their first European campaign, and then you look at the likes of, even Caballero is, as impressive as he's been. I believe that the tie against Young Boys of Bern was his first European experience. And also, you're away at this stadium that's a cauldron of, excitement and fire and passion. This is, one of the most impressive places to play in Spain. And, you're against a team that, let's not discount the way in which the way in which Valencia play. It's this sort of hammer and tongs counter-attacking approach, which is fairly identical in reality, if not exactly in terms of formation, but in terms of philosophy to the way that Monaco, attack the game. They're defensively sound. I think I had the third best defensive record in Spain last year, and that's not something that's easy to achieve with the focus on attacking football that we see in La Liga. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think Monaco played all right. Had they been a little more clinical, maybe Martial gets a penalty call. The match ends 2-2 or a 2-1 victory to Valencia, I would feel optimistic, but they didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I think they just ran up against a team that was better equipped for this particular match.
I saw they started the game terribly. Actually, I saw Echegide were in particular the left back, who Cruzado would have started obviously. He started terribly against Feghouli. He was giving him too much space, and he basically didn't have a good first 25 minutes. But he was probably one of the best defenders on the pitch in the second half. I mean, I can see a couple of headed clearances that were extremely good. I mean, he was extremely quick off his side, off his line, if you will. Monaco just did not start the game well, but they were just unlucky. I mean, after this tough start, you did see Bernardo Silva having his shot well saved. Actually, it was parried onto the post by Ryan, who's the Australian goalkeeper for Valencia. The second half, you've got Pasalic, who scores after tremendous work by Martial. Martial got a tremendous second half. Then Valencia scored completely against the run of play. And then Monaco get denied a Stonewall penalty, which is just in front of the fifth official, the aerial official. Is that how you say it? I'm not quite sure.
Either will work.
So okay, it's just in front of him, and he just useless as usual. I'm sorry, but as this is my opinion on penalty area officials, that just do not help the ref one bit. So it should have been. It was a stonewall for Monaco, and if it's a penalty, if it is scored, it's 2-2, and it's a fantastic result away at the Mestalla. Unfortunately, the penalty was not given, so the penalty was not scored. Monaco did not equalise, and Valencia scored a third. The set piece defending was not great. I tell you what, I'm not quite sure what to make of this new guy, Pasalic. He didn't have a particularly good game, I thought, but he scored a goal and he had a great chance to make it 2-2. So it's a bit like you don't know he's there until he does something, because when he does something, was quite lethal, because it wasn't that easy a goal to score, and he did it. And the only second occurrence, he almost scored his second. And you didn't. I didn't see him. I don't know what you saw, Eric, but I didn't really see him apart from those two chances.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. So you're saying you don't think that Pasalic is offering enough to the team?
Yeah, I didn't see him enough in the build-up. I saw him great at well, basically scoring the goal and having this second chance. But apart from that, I didn't really see him.
Well, I mean, I think you have to ask what his role is. I mean,
Yeah.
last year, a lot of their success, Kondogbia was integral to a lot of what Monaco were trying to do last year, and you could honestly level a little bit of those same accusations against Kondogbia. I mean, what a great player going forward with the ball at his feet, could be a goal-scoring threat, but on the other hand, could he neglect his defensive responsibilities on occasion? Yes. And I think that, obviously Pasalic isn't of the same physical ilk, or it doesn't have the same dribbling ability as Kondogbia, but they're sort of a similar player, and that's why you have the likes of a Toulalan or a Bakayoko back there to sort of, even things out. I think, honestly, at this point, Pasalic, despite, perhaps having had a less than ideal game defensively, his ability to get on the score sheet, which he showed thus far for Monaco, could potentially be the difference. They're gonna need attacking impetus from midfield if they want to turn this tie around, and I think that he could actually be, really integral to that happening.
I think there's an sorry, carry on, Flip.
Yeah, thanks. The thing is on the Valencia game. Why I'm not really being too hard on the guy for first of all he scored a goal, so that's pretty good. Is that he was playing as a second striker, he was playing quite high up the pitch, and I think when you're playing in that position, it's very, very hard to actually exist. I mean, I look at Ozil for Arsenal, it's quite difficult because you've got the defensive midfielder on your heels all the time, and sometimes even the holding midfielder next to him who is marking you. Basically all game, so it's very hard to actually exist. So I think he did quite well to have these chances, but I didn't really see him in the build-up. There's also about the team selection about Yardim. I don't know. I thought Raji was quite uncomfortable at right back. Maybe he would have done a better job at defensive midfield, and Fabinho could have played right back, something like that. I certainly would have preferred Bernardo Silva playing closer to Cavaliero, so as if, I don't know, put Pasalic on the wing and Bernardo Silva in the hole behind the striker. But it's always easy to criticise after the game, and just let's hope they can do it. And I think they can do it, but they really need not to concede any goals.
Well, that's an excellent point. 3-1 of getting that result away from home is pretty sticky going back to the Stade Louis Eric, with Valencia pretty much needing a goal and then being almost guaranteed qualification. What really is Monaco's game plan heading into the second leg?
I think they need to, throw everything they have. I mean, the 4-3-3 that they play has worked really well for them, but perhaps to change the system. I mean, looking at the likes of, especially if Kurzawa is not able to play, maybe starting Carrillo and playing like a 4-4-2 with Silva and Cavaliero wide and Martial off him, sort of a second striker, and because you're going to need to get that creativity and those goals from somewhere, and I fear for them. So I just think being as attacking as possible. If Kurzawa can't start, I go with Fabinho on the left and Raji on the right. Raji's not the quickest with the ball at his feet, but I do think he's a fairly decent crosser of the ball. And if you have Carrillo starting, there's more of an opportunity to generate offense in that regard, in that manner. But yeah, it's gonna be a tough ask, and I think that just being as attacking as possible is the only way that Monaco are gonna get anything out of this. Which is going to be difficult. Like I said, this is really going to run counter to the way that Jardim has set his teams up. It's to be defensive, hit teams on the counter. If you need 2 goals in the game to win the tie, you can't hope that Valencia are going to attack you, because they're not. They're going to sit back and be defensively solid, like they did, all through last season, and they're going to be opportunistic themselves. And if they're not set up to be aggressive and to win, it could be a very quick end to Monaco's.
I think that's an interesting point, really, Eric. That almost the way Monaco will have to play almost falls into Valencia's plan, really, which is the real worry, especially with a goal really giving them a massive upper hand. We all know the underlying implications that could happen in regards to Champions League places should Monaco fail to qualify. Philip, how big is this game for French football?
It's as big as their season is going to be. They worked so hard for this, I'm not actually going to criticise UEFA for giving Monaco such a tough game, because the first leg was so good to watch. It was really great. But yeah, it is quite massive. It's not. The good thing about Monaco's strategy is that they don't make it out like it's going to make or break their season. They have the strategy of buying cheap young players and selling them a la FC Porto for a lot of money. And I honestly think Monaco in the Europa League. Yeah, I mean it's not going to change their. It's not going to be the end of the world for Jardim or Rybolovlev. They'll say, okay, well, better luck next time. We can focus on the league. We can do well in the Europa League. But I still think they're really motivated for tomorrow evening, and they'll do everything they can to go through. I really hope they do. We'll probably talk about this once the Champions League draw is made. But Monaco in the Champions League can only be good for French football.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like I said with Marseille too, I with all these young players, the likes of Traoré and Lamar and others, Amami Touré, there's a lot of the Europa League wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for Monaco to continue to develop some of these young players and maybe come back and I think Monaco are probably prohibitive favorites for second in Ligue 1 this year. So you go out, oh well, take a step back, push for second in the league, get that guaranteed group stage place, and then make a better go of it next year.
Yeah, I mean, I can see players like Ivan Cavaleiro or Pasalic having field days in the Europa League, having lots of fun and lots of match day experience. So I mean, it's not that much of a big deal, I would say. It's not like they were broke or anything. Just like back in the pre-Rybolovlev days.
Well, I think you touched on it briefly there, Philip, about UEFA's ranking system. I might want to have to talk about that next week should Monaco fail to qualify. We'll move on to the final sort of section for this week. With the transfer window shutting next week, activity between clubs will grow as deadlines obviously create action. One of the big stories this week is Monaco turning down PSG's bid for Layvin Kurzawa. Philip, is that the kind of player PSG need, and can they strike a deal before the deadline for someone like that?
It's definitely the kind of player PSG needs, but on the pitch, not on the bench. And I cannot see Kurzawa starting ahead of Maxwell. I really can't. And I would really not be very happy if Kurzawa was brought to sit on the bench. That guy really needs to play, and I just don't see it happening at PSG. So this is why, I mean, Monaco are completely right to say we want basically all your money for this player because they don't want to sell and they don't have to. And PSG can say you're being too greedy. Monaco can always say, yeah, but we can. And I'm sorry to say this, but I would really hate Kurzawa to join PSG right now. Unless of course he plays ahead of Maxwell, but Maxwell is also an extremely good left back. Possibly one of the best in Europe. He's extremely good. But I think Kurzawa really needs to think about this, because this is going to make or break his season. Not to mention that there's Euro 2016. Where I'm pretty sure he'll be in the 23, and he'll probably want to start ahead of Evra. and that will depend on his season. So he needs to be really careful there, and I don't think a move to PSG would be the best solution for him.
That's an interesting point. I mean, Maxwell is a very much entrenched with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which always helps. Eric, what do you think to the move?
Yeah, I agree with Philip. I think that for a number of reasons. One, Kurzawa's injury history is a bit worrying for me. And if, say, he comes in this season, plays understudy to Maxwell, and then becomes, the de facto number one left back next season, and then, struggles with injury, then what? If Digne's deal to Roma is made permanent, then PSG are really struggling for a left back. Other thing is, Kurzawa's also demonstrated that he's a little bit of a head case. We saw his antics in the Under-21 Championship playoffs against Sweden. That kind of disruptive presence is not, it's not going to go down well in a locker room that already has, more than its fair share of players whose, constitutions aren't what they might be. The likes of Marco Verratti, Thiago Silva, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. There's already a lot of very combustible characters in that locker room, and whether or not PSG can afford to manage another ego is also another question. The other thing I want to mention too, though, is that PSG do have a fairly decent left back waiting in the wings in Youssouf Sabaly, who spent some time on loan in Evian and actually did pretty well. He really hasn't been given a run out by the first team at PSG, but I'd personally like to see, if they've got a match against a lesser opponent, the likes of a Gazalek or a Gangop or somebody like that. I'd really like to see Sabaly be given a run out by Laurent Blanc. Exactly, Philip. Kurzawa's got to have his eyes on the prize here in terms of 2016. If he's playing, 10 a dozen games at PSG, is he going to be a dead cert for the squad in year 2016? I don't know. I don't think so.
For the squad, yeah. I mean, come on. He's. I don't really see who's going to be second left back to ever. If it's not going to be Kurzawa, who should dish?
To make the 23. But in terms of being, the prohibitive favorite to be a starter, look at how that move to PSG has derailed Lucas Digne's career. I mean, he's already been handed 10 caps by the French national team, or so. I don't know the exact number, but it's more than a couple. Before going to PSG, he gets there and he's barely gotten the sniff. He hasn't made most of the squads even in the time since his move. And as well as he's done, let's be honest, there are a lot of better left backs out there. And the potential is also there for Kurzawa that if he does go to PSG, what's to stop them from bringing in the likes of a Ricardo Rodriguez or somebody who's an even better left back and, relegating him again to the bench? Unless you have a supreme belief in your ability as a player to be at that very, very, very top echelon of the game, then a move to PSG is really risky because we've seen already how it can, derail the careers of players. I mean, you look at how it's, given Digne and Cabaye are the best examples in terms of how it's sort of unsettled their national team careers. And that's something
I was actually going to mention Cabaye. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's something any player going to PSG has to be really, really wary of.
Yeah, because it's actually in the same program where Menez criticized Ferries that they did an interview about Cabaye, and Cabaye said that people were not very happy when Cabaye actually landed at PSG from Newcastle. And now he's perfectly happy at Crystal Palace because he is playing, and this is where PSG need to be extremely careful with their squad, and I think this is why they're not signing anyone. Also because they're not selling anyone because they're on too high wages is because they don't want to be on the bench. PSG want to sign quality players, but those players don't want to be on the bench, and I actually understand Cabaye for leaving for Crystal Palace or he just wanted to play, and I'm not even sure the as a destination was that important. I mean, he said he wanted to play for Pardew, and I actually believe him. That's not a problem. But Dean is having the same problem. Dean is a promising up and coming left back, and he needs to play. And you just can't just buy quality players who are ambitious, who want to play, who want to win trophies, who want to be part of a great team and be on the pitch, not on the bench. And it's extremely complicated. And this is why Kurzawa definitely should not join PSG. And I would actually be happy to give Sabali a run in. If Maxwell is injured, why not give Sabali a chance? It would be quite difficult against a team like Real Madrid or Barcelona, but it's a risk. I think it's a risk worth taking. Left back is not the most important position on the pitch, and once again, I think we're in total agreement with Eric that Kurzawa really should either stay at Monaco, where he'll probably have a great season, or I don't know. I think it's a bit late for him to find another club. I think it's either PSG or Monaco. It's not going to be someone else, but I really do hope he stays at Monaco.
I think a lot of English football fans will start saying, welcome to the Chelsea-Man City kind of issue where you buy so many that you're starting to buy for your bench and then you're taking players from other teams. But it seems to
Chelsea
be how it goes.
Chelsea are quite notorious for doing that, yeah.
Yeah, there's numerous English players from both clubs. I can remember recently for City, Scott Sinclair, Adam Johnson, players like that.
Glenn Johnson, Sean White-Phillips.
Exactly.
Scott Parker.
It goes on forever, doesn't it?
It goes on, yeah. and PSG have become that kind of club, unfortunately, but that's the way it works. Unfortunately,
it seems to be the way it goes with money in the end of the day. With the transfer window shut in the next couple of in a week, like I say, there's a lot of deals running around. Just a quick thought on a few. Seen one earlier on Marseille potentially loaning Real Madrid midfielder Lucas Silva. What do we think of that one?
If Lamina does go to Juventus, as has been rumored, it makes sense. If he stays, I really feel like there's that leaves the club with a surfeit of central midfielders. A surplus of central midfielders. So if Lamina goes, makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm not really sure where it's coming from.
I mean, it's a good thing you mentioned it. 12 million for Lamina. Everybody, when it was mentioned, everybody was saying, really? I mean, it's a pretty steep fee for someone who's unproven even in Ligue 1. But if I were Marseille, I would get a loan for Lucas Silva. He's a good player, great up and coming player. He's probably not going to play that much for Real Madrid, and he should do great at Marseille. So whether Lamina is sold or not, Lucas Silva definitely Marseille should go for it.
What about the rumours with Nice? They're looking for a goalkeeper. There was rumours that they had a cheeky bid for Sirigu, but it looks more likely to be Nicolas Duché. Yeah, what do you think to that one, Philip?
Oh, I think that was pretty serious. There was a legitimate offer, and Sirigu turned it down because he wanted to fight for his spot. Yeah, this is actually another example at PSG of what's going on. Sirigu is a good keeper, but now Trapp is a new guy. So Sirigu goes on the bench, and he's quite brave of him to turn it down, because he also has Euro 2016 in his sights, and he'll want to start for Italy.
It's Nice, though, isn't it? It might be maybe too much of a step down, I think, on his opinion. Eric, what do you think to Duché at Nice, maybe?
I mean, Muaz Hassan was, pretty uneven last year. And the other options, Simon Pouplan and blanking on the other keeper's name there. I think that the ambition that Nice have been showing, we look at the likes of, Paul Bice and Atem Ben Arfa and Valère Germain coming in. This is a team that's trying to improve, and I think that with this the sales of Amavi and Mopai, they've got a little bit of money, so why not? Why not try and improve what was arguably their weakest position last year? It makes sense to me. And if Duche, is a player who's been on the fringes of the France squad for quite some time now. I mean, he's a little bit older. That's probably no longer a driving factor in his decision, but he's someone that's going to want to have time on the pitch, and he's not going to get behind Trapp or behind the combination of Trapp and Sirigu. He's still a decent keeper.
Yeah. He needs to leave. I mean, he's never going to play for PSG again.
It's an excellent point, isn't it? I think he needs the game time. And finally, very quickly, what about the rumours that Leo might not go for another striker with the window shutting?
Yeah, give Guirassy, let's say, his chance. Yeah, I can see that.
Eric?
I mean, that team has me worried. If they look good last night or on yesterday afternoon with their set piece opportunities, but Lille can really struggle. I'm not saying relegation, but I'm saying like 13th, 14th, 12th, somewhere in that neighborhood, below where they should be, unless they get someone who can be an 8, 9, 10 goal a game striker. And I don't think for all the potential that Guillaume and Guirassy have that they can be that type of player, especially playing in that system. There's a little bit too much self-involvement on the parts of Buffon and Boteac, I think. I think that they need someone who's more of a target man, who can actually score and shoot rather than these sort of big, bulky hold-up players who might not be able to score as much as they have in the likes of Guirassy and Guillaume.
Well, hopefully. For their sake, I hope they do bring in another striker. But that's all we have for you this week. My thanks to Eric and Philip, and to everyone who's tuned in. Please join us next week. We're going to be an hour later for a 2-hour deadline day special. It's going to be a very interesting one, I think. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.
All right.